Hi, I'm Rebecca Williams. I'm 29 years old, and I work as a marketing director for a tech startup in San Francisco. Until 6 months ago, I was married to David Chen, a successful investment banker who I thought was the love of my life. I grew up in a small town in Ohio where birthdays were sacred. My mom would start planning my birthday weeks in advance, baking my favorite lemon cake from scratch, decorating the house with streamers, inviting all my friends. It wasn't about expensive gifts, it was about feeling seen, remembered, loved. When I moved to San Francisco for college and later for work, I carried that tradition with me. Birthdays mattered. They were a day to celebrate someone's existence, to show them they were important to you. What I'm about to tell you started with a forgotten birthday and ended with me filing for divorce in a foreign country. It's the story of how I discovered that sometimes the most painful betrayals come wrapped in the most beautiful lies, and how finding out the truth can set you free in ways you never imagined. Some people might say I was too hasty, that I should have fought for my marriage. But when you discover that your husband not only forgot your birthday, but spent that same week flying another woman to Paris, the city where you honeymooned, you realize that some betrayals are too deep to forgive. David and I met during my first year working in San Francisco. He was charming, ambitious, successful, everything I thought I wanted in a partner. He worked for Goldman Sachs, drove a Tesla, lived in a beautiful apartment in Pacific Heights with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay. I was immediately impressed. I was 24 then, fresh out of college, working my first real job at a small marketing agency. David was 28, already making serious money, confident in a way that I found magnetic. He had this ability to walk into any room and command attention, to make everyone, including me, feel like they wanted to be around him. Our courtship was like a fairy tale. David took me to the best restaurants in the city, places I couldn't afford on my entry-level salary. Weekend trips to Napa Valley, where we stayed at luxury resorts I had only seen in magazines. Surprise getaways to Seattle and Portland, always first-class flights, always the best hotels. He seemed to put so much thought into everything we did together. Looking back, I realize David wasn't thinking about what I would enjoy. He was showing off his wealth and success. But at 24, I was dazzled by the lifestyle he offered. I felt like Cinderella being swept off her feet by a prince. When he proposed after 2 years of dating, it was at the top of the Golden Gate Bridge at sunset, with a ring that cost more than I made in 6 months. The first few years of marriage were good, or at least I thought they were. David was busy with work, often traveling for deals, working late nights and weekends, but I understood investment banking was demanding. I supported his career, even when it meant spending evenings alone, weekends by myself, holidays cut short because of urgent client calls. Gradually, though, things started to change. David became more distant, more critical. He'd comment on my appearance. "Are you really wearing that to dinner with my colleagues?" He'd dismiss my work achievements. "Marketing isn't exactly rocket science, Rebecca." He'd minimize my feelings. "You're being too sensitive," became his standard response to any concern I raised. But the birthdays became a particular source of pain. The first year we were married, David forgot my birthday completely. When I gently reminded him that evening, he was genuinely apologetic, promised it would never happen again, and took me to an expensive dinner the next night. The second year, he remembered, but barely. A hastily purchased bouquet from the grocery store, and a generic happy birthday card. The third year, he was too busy with a major deal to celebrate at all. The fourth year, he was traveling for work and sent flowers to my office with a note that said, "Sorry, babe, rain check?" Each forgotten or minimized birthday chipped away at my self-worth. I started making excuses for him. He's under so much pressure at work. Investment banking is really demanding.
He shows he loves me in other ways. But deep down, I felt invisible. If the man who claimed to love me most in the world couldn't remember the day I was born, what did that say about my importance in his life?
This year, my 29th birthday fell on a Tuesday. I had been dropping hints for weeks, casual mentions of restaurants I wanted to try, showing him jewelry I liked, even leaving a calendar with my birthday circled sitting on his desk. The morning of my birthday, David left early for work without saying anything special. No kiss, no happy birthday, no acknowledgement at all. I waited all morning for a text, a call, flowers to be delivered to my office. Nothing. By lunch, I was devastated, but still making excuses. Maybe he was planning a surprise. Maybe he was waiting until evening. Maybe he had something special planned for the weekend. I came home that evening hoping to find him there with a cake or reservations somewhere special, or at least an apology and explanation. Instead, I found a note on the kitchen counter. Working late again. Don't wait up. There's leftover Chinese food in the fridge. I sat alone in our beautiful apartment, eating cold lo mein from a takeout container, and cried. It wasn't just about the birthday anymore. It was about feeling completely invisible to the person who was supposed to love me most. I called my best friend Jessica, who lived in New York. "He forgot again," I told her through tears. "Rebecca," she said gently, "this isn't normal. Partners don't forget birthdays 5 years in a row. Something is wrong." That night, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to confront David directly about our marriage, about how neglected I felt, about how his behavior was affecting me. I was going to fight for us, or at least get some answers about what was happening. But before I could have that conversation, I discovered something that made it irrelevant. The next day, David left his laptop open on the kitchen counter while he showered. This wasn't unusual. He often worked from home in the mornings before going to the office. But something made me glance at the screen. His email was open, and the top message was from a travel agency. Confirmation, round-trip flights, SFO, Paris, for David Chen and Isabella Martinez, departing Thursday. Isabella Martinez. I knew that name. She was David's colleague from the New York office, someone he'd mentioned a few times in passing, young, ambitious, very talented, according to David. My hands were shaking as I clicked on the email. 2 first-class tickets to Paris. Departure, Thursday, just 2 days after my forgotten birthday. Hotel reservations at the Georges V, one of the most romantic hotels in the city. The same hotel where David and I had stayed on our honeymoon 3 years ago. I felt like I was going to be sick. Not only had David forgotten my birthday, but he was flying another woman to Paris, our Paris, that same week. I quickly took photos of the email with my phone, then closed the laptop. When David came out of the shower, I acted completely normal. "Have a good day at work," I said, kissing his cheek like I had every morning for 5 years. But inside, I was falling apart. That day, instead of going to work, I called in sick and started investigating. I had Isabella's full name from the email, and with some social media detective work, I quickly found her Instagram account. What I saw there destroyed me. Photos of David and Isabella at business dinners that looked very much like dates. Pictures of expensive gifts, jewelry, flowers, designer handbags, with captions like, "Someone spoils me," and "feeling grateful." A photo from last month of a beautiful necklace with the caption, "Early birthday present from someone special." The necklace was identical to one I had shown David months ago, hoping he might get it for my birthday. I scrolled back through months of her photos. There was David in the background of a work event in New York. A photo of champagne glasses with the caption, "Celebrating Success," posted the same night David told me he was working late on a difficult deal.
A picture of a beautiful bouquet with the caption, "Surprise flowers at work," posted on Valentine's Day, the same day David told me he forgot about Valentine's Day because of work stress. The most painful discovery was a series of photos from what was clearly a romantic dinner at Les Bernardines in New York, one of the most expensive restaurants in the city. Isabella had posted pictures of the tasting menu, the wine pairings, her outfit for the evening. The date stamp showed it was 3 weeks ago, the same week David told me he couldn't afford to take me out for our anniversary because work had been slow. He wasn't broke. He was spending money on her while telling me we needed to tighten our budget. The timeline was devastating. While I was home alone, making excuses for his absence, David was building a relationship with Isabella. While I was feeling invisible and unimportant, he was making her feel special and spoiled. But the worst discovery was yet to come. In Isabella's photos from 3 months ago, I found pictures from a weekend in Napa Valley. The same weekend David told me he had to cancel our anniversary trip because of work. The same weekend I spent alone, crying, feeling like my marriage was falling apart. He hadn't been working, he had been with her.
When David came home that evening, I was ready. I had printed out screenshots of Isabella's social media posts, the travel confirmation, everything. I laid it all out on our dining room table like evidence in a court case. "We need to talk," I said when he walked in. David looked at the papers on the table and his face went completely white. For a moment, he looked like he might deny everything, but the evidence was too overwhelming. "Rebecca, I can explain," he started. "Explain what? That you forgot my birthday but booked a trip to Paris for your girlfriend? That while I've been home alone making excuses for you, you've been building a relationship with another woman? That you canceled our anniversary to spend the weekend with her?" David sat down heavily in a chair. "It's not what you think." "Really? Because what I think is that you've been having an affair for months, possibly longer. What I think is that while I've been trying to save our marriage, you've been planning romantic getaways with someone else. What I think is that you're a liar and a cheater." David tried several different approaches, minimizing, "It's just a work relationship," gaslighting, "You're being paranoid," and finally, when those didn't work, blaming me. "You've been so focused on your own career, we've grown apart." But I was done listening to his excuses. "I want a divorce," I said. "Rebecca, please, we can work this out. I'll end things with Isabella. We can go to counseling." "You can work it out with Isabella in Paris. I'll be filing for divorce." That night, David packed a bag and went to stay at his brother's house. I spent the evening making plans of my own. While David was in Paris with Isabella, yes, he actually went on the trip, I was executing a plan that would give me the advantage in our divorce proceedings. You see, I had a secret that David didn't know about. 6 months earlier, I had been offered a position with an international marketing firm based in London. The offer included a significant salary increase, stock options, and the opportunity to work on global campaigns. I had turned it down because I didn't want to disrupt David's career. Now, with my marriage over, I called them back. The position was still available. Within a week, I had accepted the job, given notice at my current company, and booked a flight to London. But before leaving, I did something that David would never see coming. I filed for divorce in the UK. Here's what most people don't know. If you're a US citizen living abroad, you can file for divorce in your country of residence, and UK divorce laws are much more favorable to the wronged party than California's no-fault divorce laws. In the UK, adultery is grounds for divorce, and the financial settlements often reflect the fault of the cheating party. I hired one of London's best divorce attorneys, a sharp woman named Sarah Bennett who specialized in international divorces involving infidelity. I provided her with all the evidence I had gathered: the travel confirmations, the social media posts, bank records showing David's spending on Isabella. When David returned from Paris, he found our apartment empty, except for a note. "I've moved to London for work. My attorney will be in touch.
Enjoy explaining to everyone why your wife disappeared while you were in Paris with your girlfriend.
6 months later, my divorce was finalized in a London courtroom. The settlement was everything I had hoped for and more. Because I could prove David's adultery with documented evidence, and because I had been financially contributing to our marriage equally, I received a generous settlement that included half of our joint assets, a significant portion of David's retirement accounts, and even part of his stock options. The most satisfying moment came when David's lawyer tried to argue that I wasn't entitled to as much because I had abandoned the marriage by moving to London. My brilliant attorney, Sarah Bennett, calmly presented the timeline. David's affair had been going on for months before I left, and I had only moved after discovering his betrayal. The judge was not impressed with David's attempt to blame me for his infidelity. "Mr. Chen," the judge said sternly, "you cannot commit adultery and then claim your wife abandoned the marriage when she discovered your affair and chose to rebuild her life elsewhere." But the money wasn't the real victory. The real victory was reclaiming my life. My job in London exceeded all my expectations. I was working on campaigns for major international brands, traveling across Europe for work, living in a beautiful flat in Kensington. I had joined a local gym, taken up painting classes, learned to speak conversational French. For my 30th birthday, my first birthday as a divorced woman, I threw myself a party in London. My colleagues came, new friends I had made, even Jessica flew in from New York. We celebrated at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the Thames, and for the first time in years, I felt truly seen and appreciated. The best part? I didn't spend a single moment of my birthday thinking about David. I heard through mutual friends that David and Isabella's relationship didn't survive the scandal of the divorce. Apparently, when the reality of their affair became public, Isabella decided she didn't want to be known as the other woman and ended things. David, meanwhile, faced consequences at work when their affair became known to HR. Relationships between senior employees and junior staff were heavily discouraged, and the fact that it had led to such a public divorce didn't help his reputation. He tried to contact me several times after the divorce was finalized, long emails apologizing, asking for a second chance, claiming he had made a mistake. I never responded. What was the point? He had made his choice when he booked those tickets to Paris. About a year after the divorce, I started dating again. I met James, a British architect, at a gallery opening in Shoreditch. He was kind, funny, genuine, everything David had pretended to be, but never actually was. James was different from David in every way that mattered. Where David was flashy and status conscious, James was understated and authentic. He drove a practical car, lived in a cozy flat in Islington, and cared more about experiences than expensive things. When he took me out, it was to places he genuinely thought I'd enjoy, not places designed to impress. On our third date, James mentioned that he had a reminder in his phone for my birthday, which I had casually mentioned during our first conversation. "I never want to be the kind of person who forgets something important to someone I care about," he said. That simple statement made me realize how fundamentally broken my marriage to David had been. A man I had known for 3 weeks cared enough to remember my birthday, while a man I had been married to for 5 years couldn't be bothered. On my first birthday with James, he surprised me with a weekend trip to Edinburgh. Not because it was expensive or impressive, but because I had mentioned loving Scottish castles. He had planned every detail, from the cozy bed and breakfast to tickets for a whiskey tasting I had said I wanted to try. "How did you remember all of this?" I asked him as we walked through Edinburgh Castle. "Because it's important to you," he said simply, "and you're important to me." That's when I knew I had found something real. Looking back, I'm grateful that David forgot my birthday and flew Isabella to Paris. If he hadn't been so carelessly cruel, so obviously unfaithful, I might have spent years longer in a marriage that was slowly killing my spirit. His betrayal set me free to discover who I really was, what I really wanted, and what I truly deserved. I learned that I'm stronger than I ever imagined, brave enough to start over in a foreign country, and worthy of love that remembers birthdays, and so much more. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that could have happened. David thought he was choosing Isabella over me. What he actually did was choose to set me free. And for that, I'll always be grateful. If this story shocked you, just wait for what's next. Leave a comment, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and of course, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss a single notification.